Hey there guys, and welcome to this new tutorial on creating a custom React data table. And today in this video we are going to see how to add a new record of data using this add icon over here. So what we literally want for now, this is the current state of our table, and we have these custom components alongside with the icon setup, but for now they don't really do anything. That's neither the search bar nor any of these icons does any action. So we're going to start today by implementing the first action, that's to add a new row of data in our data table. So let's head straight to the code and start the implementation. So now we're back in our code, and practically what we want is to have a piece of state which is going to hold the current state of the student which we want to be added, and we will click on a certain add button somewhere in our code. That student is going to be added onto our JSON server backend or our JSON server database. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this, and this is just a state called student to add alongside with the adding function that set student. So this state holds the default structure of any default new record that we want to add on our table. So we know each student should have a name, and we set that name initially to be an empty string. Same for the matricle. We give the level a default value of 1, a gender of male, and an age of 15. So let's say the average age for students in our system is going to be 15, but really you can give this any value you really want. Now if we head down to our add student component, which is just the add icon, we can see the icon here. We see this span has an on-click event listener, and this on-click event listener is in charge of opening a modal. Well, for now we have not yet seen how to do that and open that modal, but we want that when we click on this icon we should have a modal opened, and that modal is going to contain a form which is going to permit us to set the respective values of this student state. So we're going to head over to Material UI and take a look at the modal component and see how we can implement it in this code such that when the icon is clicked, we can have the modal opened and the different values for the student to be added field in the modal. So I'm going to come down here to my browser, and here in the Material UI website we have this basic modal, and this is practically what we are going to be using for our modal. So the modal is just as you can see, you have this modal component, we have this open state, and this open state, we have this state here. This state is practically responsible for opening or closing the modal. So we have these two functions for setting the open state. The handle open function sets the value of the state to true, while the handle close sets the value of the state to false. And this true or false, when the state is true, the modal will be opened, whereas when the state is false, the modal is going to be closed. So yeah, and down here in this box we can substitute the content of this modal of this box by our own content. In our case, we are going to substitute most of these components here by a form component alongside input components, which are going to help us to change the value of this student to add state and submit it when we click on the certain submit button in our modal. So I'm going to go ahead and start copying some of these and putting in our code to set up our modal. So I'm going to start from these imports. I think we don't have any of these imports here in our code, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, head over to the code and paste. Alright, so we're importing the box, button, typography component, and the modal component from Material UI. I'm going to return to the website again, copy the styles for the modal, just put it above these icon styles. Alright, back, and I'm going to get these states and functions for dealing with the modal and place them same way they did, as beneath our own piece of states. And yeah, I'm going to get the modal itself. We don't really need the button because what this button does here is the button you click on to open the modal, but in our code, this is not the button we are going to click on to open the modal. We are going to click on the add component to open the modal. So I'm going to leave the button behind and I'm just going to get this modal. So we are going to come to our body and somewhere down the table, that's beneath the table, we're going to post this modal component. All right, so what we want to do next is we're going to head over to where we have the states for the modal, and here we have this open state which controls or which dictates if our modal is open or closed. When the state is false, the modal is closed, and when the state is true, the modal is opened. But this is trying to mean that we'll have only one modal in our code. But in the future, we're going to have more than one modal, since as we'll have a modal for adding a new student, we'll have a modal for editing a student, and we're also going to have a modal for deleting a student. So we're going to have multiple modals, meaning that we cannot just use a two-value state to handle that. So I'm going to modify this state and these functions a little. So I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. So now we have the open and set open state, and the initial value of that state is false. Now our handle open state is going to go and receive a value as a parameter and set the open state to that value. Of course, we see that it's going to be a string, so it's receiving a string and setting the open state to that string. Meaning now we can set the open state to any string we want. And if we come down here to our modal, we see that what the modal does is the value inside here is a boolean, because at first we had the open state to be either true or false, meaning that when this open state was true, the modal was supposed to be open. So what we want to do here is we want to do a comparison inside here to check if the result of that comparison is going to be true. When that result is true, our modal is going to be open, and when the result is false, the modal is going to be closed. So I'm going to go ahead and post this, and here now we're doing a comparison inside here to compare this current state of the modal of the open to compare the current value of this open state. That's we're checking if the current value of the open state is add modal. If it's add modal, then this modal is going to be open, and we set this value to be add modal when we click on this the add student component over here. So we see that when we click on this pan, we're handling open and passing in add modal as the value of the handle open here. What it does is it sets the open state, so that's the parameter that we pass. So we're calling handle open and passing in add modal, meaning that we want the value of the open state to be add modal. So when it comes down here and it does that comparison here in the open state, it's going to see that that's actually true and the modal is going to be open. So that's how we handle opening our modal in this case. And I just realized that here we have a capital AY, up here the A is small a, so I'm going to capitalize this, and yeah, so we're going to save this and see if we actually have our modal open when we click on this icon. So save, and when we return down here, that's back to our code. If I click here, we see that modal open. We have text in the modal, and yeah, this is just the dummy text that wasn't found in the modal. So now we have our modal set up. So what we want to do next is we want to fill our modal. That's we want to replace some of these typography components with input components. So text fields and selects, which are going to help us to set the different fields of this set student to add state. All right, so let's go ahead and start adding those input components. So I'm going to head down here, and what I want to do is I want to select the second typography component and replace this with a form. So I'm just going to give this form some props as no validate and set autocomplete to off. And I'm going to come over to this text in a modal and replace it by fill in the form to add a new record. Alright, so I'm just going to come inside this form and I'm going to paste the first input field. So let's justify that a bit. And now we have this first text field. So these are really just material UI text fields. We just have this text field component and it has a label of name, that's for the student's name. So the value of that's the current value of this text field component is going to be the current student's name, that's the student to add dot name. So that's practically saying that initially that text field is going to be empty because the current state has an empty string value. So that's that for the name. It has a variant of standard, and yeah, we're going to see about the variant. While for the SX, which is just the styling for this text field, we're going to give it a margin bottom and a display of block so that it stays on its own line. Now for the event listener, that's the unchanged event listener. What we want is when we change, that's when the input or the value in this text field changes, we want to set the student to add. That's why we're calling this set state function, which will set the student to add, and it's going to maintain all the properties of that student state except the name property, because this is actually the text field for the name of the student. So what we want is for each change, we want to set the name of that student to be the change, that's the change value. That's we're using this event parameter to get the value, that's the current value of the text field, and set it to the name field of that student, of the student to be added. So the matrical is going to be the same matrical, the age same, the level same, gender same. So all remains the same except the name. And yeah, in doing that, that's how we actually set the name of the student to be the name gotten in this text field. So we're going to save now and preview just to see what we get. We're going to do this just once, and for the remainder of the text fields, I'm just going to paste ahead and we're going to preview only after I've pasted all the other text fields. So if we save this now and come over to our browser, we get nothing. Well, let's check the console. We'll get the error text field is not defined, and my bad, I actually forgot to import the text field component. So I'm just going to come back to the code and head over to where we have our import statements. Just paste the import line for the text field. So we're going to save again and head back to the browser once more, and yeah, now we'll click on this add icon. We have fill in the form to add a new record, and we have this name text field. Alright, so I think we spoke about the variant prop for the text field, and here we have a variant of standard, and it's what makes the text field to have this feel about it, just this single line beneath the text field. So if we head over to the Material UI website, we have these different text field with different variants. So here you have the variant of outline with this outline, you have the field variant, and you have the standard variant, and this is actually what we're using now in our code. So that's just about it for variants. So different components have their different variants which you can use to modify the field depending on you. So in our code, we went ahead with the standard variant, but feel free to use whatever variant for the text fields that suits you. So now we're just going to head back to the code and continue pasting the different text fields for the different fields of our state that's set as student to add state. And the next I'm going to add is that for the matrical. So same as above, we have this new text field for the matrical. meaning that we're going to have an input field for each field of, or for each property of this state. We have one, two, three, four, five properties for this object, for this student to add object. So we're going to have five input fields, each handling each of these different properties. That's each for each value to set. So for now, we have the name and magical state, and we're going to have more. So the magical state, same as the name, everything remains the same except the magical, because this is actually the value we want to be changed when we perform a change on this text field. So the name is going to remain the same. We want to change the magical to the current value of the text field, so we use the e.target.value prop of this event object to set the matrical, that's the value of the matrical, to the current value of this text field, that's the current text in the text field. We leave the age same, level same, and yeah, so this is practically what we're going to be doing for the rest of all the text fields. So I'm just going to go ahead and paste them. So let's come beneath this text field and I'm going to paste this. Now let's justify this a little, and yeah, so beneath our text field for the matrical, we have another text field for the age, in which everything is pretty similar. The current value is the current value of the age, whereas on change, we want to set the age to the event.target.value, except here we pass it to an integer, because just in case you might receive a string from this text field, so you want to pass that integer string to an actual integer value before setting it as the student's age. Down here for I think it's level. Yeah, so for the level property, what we have here is actually a select field, because here we actually know the levels, that's the different levels we have in our system. The level values can just be 1, 2, 3, or 4. So here you really don't want your user to be passing random values, let's say 20 or so. So it's more appropriate to use a select field, and the logic is pretty much the same. You just have this unchanged event. You have the current value first to be, that's the current value of that level, and you unchanged, you really just want to set the level to the event.target.value that's similar, that's same as in the first two cases. And yeah, now you just have menu items, each containing any level, or each containing the different levels in your application. And that's it about the level select field. Same for the gender, we have just two genders, that's male and female. So we do the same. We have a select field with the current value to be student's gender. We have this unchanged event listener that sets the gender to be the selected gender from the select field. And that's it for our input field. So we're going to go ahead and save and preview in the browser to see what our current model, that's our add student model, looks like. But before doing this, I have to ensure that I've actually imported all the components I'm using, because I think there's a few components I've imported, like the form control, import, select, and all of those. So I'm just going to go ahead, let's move over to where we have our import statements and do these imports. So we're going to come here and paste this. So we're importing the form control, select, input, menu item, and I'll save and come ahead and preview in our browser. So I'm going to click on this icon, and yeah, now we actually get this kind of model with one for the name, the matrical, the age, level, and we've got these select fields for the level and the gender. So now what I want is to test this model. So I'm going to add some buttons down here, and when I click on those buttons, I want to console log the current value of our student state to see if these models can actually help to change the value of the student to be added. All right. So let's head back to our code, and I'm going to come down to um yes, I'm going to come down here under our last form control component. So here I'm going to paste this box, and literally this box, it has two buttons, the first button and the second button. So the second button has this add student text in it, while the first button has this add student text, while the second button has this cancel text. So this is the button which on click I want to actually add a new student. For now it says handle add row, and this is the function I haven't created yet. It's the function to actually do the add operation. That's the request to the server, to the JSON server, to add a new student. But I haven't created this function yet, so for testing purposes I'm going to comment this and instead log the student we have to the console to ensure that everything functions alright. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this line of code, then just put a console log and student to add, because student to add is actually the state we are setting for each of these input fields. So at the end of all that, we want to console log the student. We'll click on this add student button to preview that student on our console. So we're going to save this and we'll head over to our browser. I'm going to open the console. Now I'm going to try to just fill in some dummy data in here, change the age to whatever, and now we'll click on this add student button. We actually get this student here in the console. So I have the student with the age of 18, that's the 18, female 3, and all of these. And actually I forgot to mention, but here what we have are number text fields, while here we have string text fields. So you see, for this number text field we actually have the options to increase and decrease, and actually this is all done by just a simple property, which is this. I think we had that on the age, and yeah, this type of number actually makes the text field to be a number text field or a number input. So just like on a normal input field you have this type of number, same for the text field, we have this number prop, where you can see for the other string text fields we don't have that number prop. So that's actually what makes the text field to be different from the normal string text field. So coming back to our browser, we just tested this and we realized that we actually get the student each time we um, use this and click on this add button. So you can click on the cancel button if you don't actually want to add that student. And yeah, all what this cancel button does is it calls this handle close function. We've got it here, handle close. And what handle close is, it sets the state of, it sets this open state. I think we have the open state over here, and handle close sets the state back to false. So false means the value of the open state is not equals to add modal anymore. So this modal is going to be closed, since that is open only when our open state is equals to add modal. Meaning if we set the state to false, this isn't going to be true and our modal is going to be closed. So guys, that's what we have now, and what we want to do is to create this handle add row function, which permits us to add that new row of data, so that we're no more just logging into our console but actually posting it to our JSON server database in order to have that new student on our database. So now I'm just going to head over to somewhere in the code beneath, let's say this use effect, and yeah, the use effect actually ends here. So beneath this I'm going to paste this function. So what we have here is just this handle add row function, and all we're doing is we're doing a fetch request to this endpoint, And this is the endpoint that serves our student data on JSON server. So if you come to this console here, we have this endpoint actually that's HTTP um, localhost 8000 students. So this endpoint is what serves our data. So we're doing a post request to this endpoint with these headers and the body. So the body is simply the student object actually, the set student, because we have a name, matricle, age, level, and gender. Because the object we're sending here has to actually match the object structure that we have here. Well, in practical scenarios, when you're working with a real database, you have a model for that database. So you have to ensure that the object you are sending here, well, it matches that model structure object. So here what we are doing is we have a name which is going to be the student to add dot name value. So basically what we're doing is we're stringifying that student object because the properties of that student objects are the same properties here. So rather than doing this, we can just delete all of this and pass in the student to add. Yeah, and I think there's no need using an async await approach when you are going to use dot then and this dot then function. So I'm going to take away this await and take away the async as well. So here we have this function doing a fetch request to this endpoint, and when the request is done, actually we want to collect the response, get the JSON, and after getting the JSON, we'll have this data. So we log the data to the console just to see the data we get, and we send this alert to the user of student added. And we do a location.reload. This is actually to reload the page to see that new, because if we don't reload the page, JSON server wouldn't re-render the data that it has. So after adding the student to our database, we have to refresh the page such that a new data is fetched with the new student added onto our database or our JSON server database. So now this function is not being used. So what we want to do is head down to the button and remove this console log and uncomment the function. Then we save, and we are going to come now to our browser, and here I want to open the console just so that when we add the data we can actually see if we can see the new data that we have. That's because I think somewhere in the code that's after the data was added we console logged the response. So yeah, that's why we're opening our console now. So I'm going to try to add a new student. And just call her Grace. Give us some random matricle, and yeah, we're just going to leave all of this. So when we add student, yeah, we see that student here in the console, and we see this alert of student added. So we will click on OK. The page refreshes, and we have that student added at the bottom of our data table. So what we have here is Grace with the strange matricle and all of our other data properties. So if we head over to our code and into our students.json folder, we see this new object of Grace added, and this is the student we just added. That's Grace with the random matricle and all of these. But what we see in addition is this ID field. Yeah, I remember back in here in our data table component, the student to add object or state does not have that ID field, but yeah, when you actually send that data to your backend or database, the database automatically adds that ID field for you. And I think that's the same situation in most databases, MongoDB and all of that. Yeah. So what happens is your add DTO, or should I just say add model, usually excludes that ID field because your database gives you that data automatically. So in this case, we did same, and JSON server returned us that ID automatically. And yeah guys, so everything is starting to look good and okay. I think we're pretty much done with the add functionality except for this location.reload. So typically what you don't want is for your page to be refreshed each time you have a new student added, because that's a bit, I don't know how to say it, local or stuff here. So what we want to do here is we want to use the student state. That's this student state, because I think this student state holds all the current students in our application or displaying on our table. So what we want to do here is actually to, so I'm just going to, replace this location dot reload with this, and let's justify that a little bit. All right, so after we get the data, that's the data which has been added to the database, we console log that data. Well, in this case, we actually don't need to console log it again, but I'm just going to leave that there. So we send this alert of student added, and what we want to do later is to set the current students to this new student array. And what we're doing is we're destructuring the students array. So we have all our students in the student array plus the new student, which is this data returned or the response from our JSON server database. So we add that response to this array to form the new students array. And so this new data is what is going to be considered as our students data. And since as this is a state, we know that our page is re-rendered at each change of a state. So it's going to re-render the page and serve us all the data, including our new students data. And now we're calling this handle close function to actually close the model. In the case of location.reload, our page was refreshed, so the model was going automatically, but now we have to call this function manually to close it. So let's go ahead and save and try this out in our browser. So I'm just going to refresh, I don't know, just for, so we can actually close the console now. And we're going to add a new student. Let's say render, and just give it a random matrical. So now when we add the student and we have this student.id, and we will do this, we actually see Brenda now, and yeah, I think that's a lot smoother than having our page being refreshed. And so that's all about the add functionality, guys. Now reviewing everything we did in this video, we had this add student component. The add student component, to this component we attach this on click event listener. Now when we click on this icon or this pan, we want to set the state, that's the open state, to add modal. So setting this open state over here to add modal means this modal is going to be open. This modal down here is going to be open, since as this condition open equals to add modal is going to be true. Now when the modal is open, we have these input fields which are managing each property of our student to add state. And this student to add state holds the current student which we want to add to our database. If we look at the properties over here, we have the name, the matrical, level, number. And so this student to add each, should I call it input field here? That's the text field for the name. So each of them manage the respective property in this student to add state. So after setting all the states, we have these buttons down here, one to add the student and one to cancel the action. So on click of this button, that's the first button, we call this function handle add row. And if we move over to the handle add row function over here, you see that it's just a request to our endpoint. That's a post request actually with the appropriate headers, and here we're stringifying our student to add object, because that's the object, as we said, the object that has the properties for the new student to be added. So we stringify the object as the body, and when the request is done, we get the JSON. From the JSON, we actually get the data, and from that data, we set the students, that's the students of our project, to be the old students plus the new student, which is that data returned to us from JSON server, and we close our model. And yeah, that's it guys for the add functionality. I hope the tutorial helped you to understand how to add a new record onto a data table, and in our next tutorial we're going to be seeing how to actually edit any record of data in our table. So thank you guys very much for watching, and If this video helped you as well as the past tutorials, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos which we are going to be releasing. And yeah, see you guys in the next video.